So thank you everyone for coming, and thank you Gottfried and Gunther for giving me the chance to be here and to be part of the team. And today I would like to talk in general terms about children in philosophy, so basically how they appear and when they appear and why we have forgotten to talk about children in philosophy. And I will give some suggestions why I think this has happened. And first, I would like to start with a case that it really surprised me when I found it, when I started reading about children and damage, because I think it's a very good example about how we treat children and how we make arguments about it, and what are the values of our societies. So it's the case of Mary Ellen Wilson. I don't know if you have heard about this before. To make a long story shorter, she was an orphan in New York 1 century ago, and she was adopted by a couple. And this couple used to mistreat her and abuse her physically and emotionally. So one of the neighbors, Etta Wheeler, realized, and she heard some noise, and she broke this private and public sphere, and she decided to take some action and see what was happening. And when she realized that actually she was mistreated, she decided to go to the trials and to help Mary Ellen. And her surprise when she asked for some advice was that she was told that there was no law protecting children, but only a law protecting animals. So you couldn't treat your horse bad in a cruel way, but there was no law protecting children. So she was suggested that the best way, if she wanted the result, if she wanted to win in the trials, would be to make this argument. So although Mary Ellen gave her testimony, and she clearly said that she didn't want to leave her there. She said that she was mistreated. The question in the trials was not whether she was suffering or not, whether she wanted to stay there or not, but whether the parents have the right to treat you as a thing. So she used this analogy, and she said, okay, if Mary Ellen is an animal, and you cannot be cruel toward the animals, you cannot be cruel toward your daughter, although you think she's your belonging. So she won the trial, she adopted the girl, and the American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty toward Children was created. But then my surprise is that even though we have this case, and even though during the last century we have developed a lot of declarations concretely toward children, this hasn't been translated into a theory in philosophy, into an ethical theory about children and damage, but always it's been from the point of view of the adults. So what we have are theories about parenting. So do we have the right to adopt? Do we have the right, everyone has the right to have a child or not? So, and if we look in other areas, it hasn't been like that. We have in bioethics, in philosophy, there's a wide development of medical ethics, applied ethics, etc. Also with animal rights, it has led to some movements defending animal rights. So my question was why we have forgotten in philosophy, especially when children are indeed involved in ethical problems. It's not that they don't face problems, not only poverty, but every time, if we understand that there's a problem of justice, there's an asymmetry, every time that there's a potential harm, then why haven't we cared about this concrete group of beings? And just to give some data, because I think it's important, it's not only that they suffer for poverty in a global perspective, but also if we think about our children, if we think about Western societies, the children here also face other problems. And I want to go very fast, but at least I would like to talk about this, because normally people don't know that this is a reality. For instance, that 20% of children in Europe suffer some kind of sexual abuse, so 1 in 5, that's a lot. No one knows in Spain that, for instance, I don't know here, but 1 child every month died because of physical violence in the family, but everyone knows, given the mass media attention, all the data about gender violence or other kind of violence. And again, the same with violence between peers and emotional and physical abuse. So the data is there. It's not that they don't face ethical problems, but somehow we look the other way. So my question was, okay, when do we see children in philosophy, in applied ethics, in applied philosophy? And what I found in general was that they were there in moral reasoning problems and dilemmas. So just like an example, I don't know if you know this kind of dilemmas, like if someone attacks you and your baby is crying, should you kill your baby in order to protect 20 people, or should you let it? So this kind of moral dilemma reasoning, just to see how we reason in these cases. Or again, to defend animals, sometimes they are used as an example. If you are in a sinking boat, would you save your pet, your dog, or a baby that you don't know? And sometimes they are used in order to defend animal rights, or to defend whatever you want to defend. In genetics, in bioethics in general, they appear or in the first year of life, like in debates with fetus and the moral status at the beginning of life, or what we see is teenagers in the limit, 15-year-old, 17-year-old, like, can they decide, are they already autonomous or not? So again, the question is whether they are an adult or not. Or we care about future generations. So we don't care about the children right now, but once they are an adult. Or then we have theories about how to become a good adult, so in education. So the thing, to make a long story shorter, is that we have children in philosophy, whether in the first year of life or when they are almost adults. But what happened in between is, like, if you are 10 years old, no ethical problem is there, you don't have anything to say. And most of the times what I found was that we have the adults' problems from where suddenly some children were involved, but we don't have the children problem themselves. So why? And here I have a few suggestions. Let's see what I develop in the following years. But one is a general cultural tolerance toward violence. And the second one is more philosophical. It's about the concept, the tools that we use. So in general, I would say that the tools that we are using are created for adults' problems, so they don't fit. When we want to use all our categories to children, they just don't fit because they are made for adults. So going to the first one, children and violence, I would like to use here an example by David Finkelhor. He's a sociologist, but I think maybe this is changing, but I think it's really a good example. And he said that we could imagine that we are going out of the office and we see one of our, or someone from our team who suddenly rush and start insulting another one, and he hits him, he starts hitting him on the ground, and it's a big scandal. What would happen if this happened in your office? Probably the one who is attacked will go to the trials, the other one will lose the job, and it will be a big issue for the following months. But if we take the same example, the same action in a school backyard, and we have 12 years old, 10 years old children who then suddenly one rush into the other one, start insulting and hitting the other one, what are the reactions normally? And maybe not the people here in this room, but culturally, I think this doesn't help for children's disability, because the reaction normally was, well, this is normal, this makes them strong, they are just playing, they are kids. So basically, and I think this is the important thing philosophically, is that we're sending the message that they should live with violence when we are not sending that message to adults. We could say, well, the attacker is not an adult, he's not responsible, okay, maybe, but even though, why don't we treat the victim as we would treat the victim if he is an adult? And I think this all these questions have also to do with how philosophers have treated these issues. And taking the same example, but to asymmetric relationship, again, if for instance your boss slap you on your face because you have broken the computer or because you interrupt a phone call, probably it will be also a big, don't do it, probably it will be also a big issue. But however we accept this, or we have been accepting this as a way of educating children, I think until yesterday. Maybe not people here, but recently a survey said that 80% of parents in the United States accept using violence, or so physical punishment, to educate children. Only until he is as tall as you. Because then is, well, the arguments are, no, but it's not lovely, you should talk to him, you can already talk to him and reason, but do we really use violence when we cannot talk to someone? Because I've never been slapped on my face in another country when I don't speak a language. So here the philosophical question, and what I think is important, is why violence is perceived as less humiliating when the victim is a child than when the victim is an adult. And I think we should talk about it. I think this is one of the reasons why we philosophers haven't cared that much about this topic, because actually they are not visible. They are not part of the picture, or they haven't been part of the picture for so long. So, and in connection with the other things, I think behind all this, what we have in general is an idealization of childhood and an oblivion, a neglect of real children. So we see childhood as something wonderful or horrible, but something that we don't touch, that is there. And then we have real children and adolescents with real problems, with violent context, but we don't really know that much about what's happening there in the real world of a child. For instance, we don't seem to accept or to know in general that children normally are in more violent cases and risky situations than adults. First of all, because they cannot choose where they don't choose where they live, they don't choose the neighborhood. You can change your work, but you cannot change your school unless something really important happens. And most of all, you don't choose the adults you interact with when you are a child. So this puts you in a risky situation. But I think it's not really visible. And now, second reason that I think is behind this oblivion or this neglect has to do with how we have built the categories, the ethical categories and the philosophical categories, I would say. And basically, I don't know if you are used to these concepts, but anyway, when we say why children are valuable, why we should care about them, normally in philosophy you have two answers. One is because they will be adults, because they will be rational, they are potential adults. And the other one is, well, because a little bit like Mary Ellen, because they can feel pain and pleasure. So, like animals, they can suffer, we should care about them. So my question is, how can your problems be relevant when who you are now and here? It doesn't matter when you are visible and when you are important or valuable, because you will be something or because you're similar to another thing, then you're out of the picture. And the other answer normally is dignity, but dignity is a problematic concept by itself because it's self-affirming, and at some point you have to say, okay, you have dignity, but why? Because you're rational, because you can feel, so you have to come back to one of these. So the thing is, when you are somewhere in between, then probably you are eclipsed. So it has to do with the concept of moral standing and how we have built this. And the general picture that we normally have is whether you are relevant because you are a human being, a rational, wonderful one, because you can feel pain and pleasure, or because you are alive. And the last one doesn't help us now. And I think we are forgetting something in between, because then what we have is a dualistic view. Whether you are an agent, someone who can make decisions and has autonomy and all that, or whether you are a passion, someone who can suffer, someone who can react. But a child, this makes us like we put together a fish, an egg, a baby, so it doesn't help. I think in ethics and in general for reality. It's like we are seeing reality with the wrong glasses, especially according to children. So whether you can reason or you can feel. And I think this dualistic way of seeing reality doesn't help because we're missing something in between. You can feel or you can suffer, or you can have basic emotions or secondary emotions. You can feel guilty, you can feel other things that is not the same a fish than a baby. For instance, I think child suicide is a good example about this. Children start committing suicide according to the statistics when they are 11 years old, and boys and girls, when they are 12 years old. So when someone kills himself, it's not just a passion, it's not just someone who receives, but someone who makes a decision. But it's not the same as a dog. It cannot be in the same category, I would say, because one thing is letting yourself die if your guardian dies, like a dog can do, but children are something different. So I think we're forgetting it's not the same feeling, it's not the same suffering. So my intuition is that the categories we are using are not that well to make it visible, and maybe we should pay attention to these kind of things, like a 3-year-old baby has already developed proud, guilt, shame, etc. So maybe we should build something specific for them if we want to treat their problems. And it's not the same just suffering, as I said before, than knowing that someone that you trust has betrayed you, that the one who's hitting you is someone that you trust. All these kind of things, children can do it. At least, maybe they cannot verbalize it, but at some ages they can already do it. So maybe we should build something concretely for them. And that will be, in general, my suggestion. Thank you very much.